This is the Radical Rant Podcast.
Freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy has been poured into the All-Elite Wrestling Ring.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Hot Tag Podcast. Adam aka askcsradical here with you guys, and we are going to go through the entirety of All Out, which was another good showing from All Elite Wrestling as they head into their television taping starting October 2nd. And like I said, all in all, it was a really good show. I mean, it's still not what Double or Nothing was. Double or Nothing is still the king so far of all their big shows at this point, but this was a very good number 2. You know, it does get over Fyter Fest and Fight for the Fallen, and it definitely leaves some good groundwork going in to their TV show on TNT. So let's get right into it. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. Like I said last week, I started getting a cold, and now I'm in the midst of getting over it, so my voice isn't quite where it is, and I'm praying to God that I don't sneeze 1,000 times while I record this. So we're going to start right at the buy-in. So we have the Women's Casino Battle Royale for one of the contenders for the Women's World Championship match that is on the first episode of television. There were a lot of names in there, a lot of surprises in there, but I gotta tell you, this is probably the worst Battle Royale they've done so far, because I don't feel like there was ever a really good moment in the match that I'm going to remember. It's not like Orange Cassidy and Tommy Dreamer in one of them. It's not, even the Fyter Fest one was kind of meh. Like most of the time the Battle Royales are a bit of a mess, but this one specifically was just all over the place and impossible to follow, and people that we know as names just didn't do anything. So some of the names that were in there, aside from the usual suspects, I mean, obviously you had Nyla Rose, you had Britt Baker, you had Leva Bates. You had a bunch of people, you had Bea Priestley, like people that we've already seen. There were a lot of names out there that, were new names you hadn't seen yet. There was Priscilla Kelly, who I was actually surprised to see there. Obviously, we knew we had Jazz and Teal Piper, that being Roddy Piper's daughter. You had Tennille Dashwood, the aforementioned WWE Emma. She didn't do a damn thing in that match, which was disappointing. Nicole Savoy and Big Swole, or Ariel Monroe, both from their separate Mae Young Classics. You had Shazza McKenzie. You had, I'm trying to think, there's a few more that I know I'm missing here. You had Eva Lise. Sadie Gibbs was an interesting one because nobody knew who she was, but she was relatively impressive. I'd like to see her in a one-on-one match to see how that goes. And I know there's a couple of names I'm forgetting, but I'm just going to get to the Joker at this point. The Joker, because I sat there thinking, who the hell can they bring in the Joker spot that would be a surprise? Because all the key people were in the match already. So I'm thinking, okay, who could they bring in? And Mercedes Martinez was the Joker, which I was definitely surprised by. It's another one of those characters, too, that you're just like, man, why didn't WWE move on this girl? Like, this woman is one of the best women in the business. Doesn't matter that she's older. She can still go. I mean, her match against her and Meiko Satomura in the second Mae Young Classic was proof enough that age doesn't necessarily matter. Talent can still cross bounds. And so Mercedes was in there. But the thing, like I said earlier, is so many people didn't do anything. Like Tennille didn't do anything. Priscilla Kelly really didn't do anything. Mercedes had a little bit in there, but she was dumped out relatively quick. Like, I don't feel like there was ever any sort of a story going through this Battle Royal. It was just a thing. And the problem with a lot of women's Battle Royals, as we've seen, WWE has also been very guilty for this, is that some of them just don't go very well. I mean, I don't mean some of them as being the Battle Royals. I mean the people in the match. So what happens is there's a good section of the Battle Royal where just people are just getting tossed out like it's nothing. Like the easiest things in the world, and they just fall out. And that was a lot of it. So a lot of these big names like Tennille Dashwood and Priscilla Kelly and Mercedes Martinez, like relatively speaking, a lot of them were getting thrown out without any effort. And I'm sitting there watching this being like, you're making these women look so bad. Like you're trying to like talk how like amazing this women's division can be, and yet you have so many of these women that people know have been very good for a long time, and they're just getting dumped out like they're rookies. It was very irritating to watch. And then in the end, the Final Four was Mercedes Martinez, Bea Priestley, Britt Baker, and Nyla Rose. And Mercedes gets tossed out first. Britt Baker manages to overcome Priestley, but Priestley then just grabs the arm of Britt Baker a la Hulk Hogan with Sid Vicious, and Nyla Rose just dumps Britt out, and Nyla wins. And I'll talk about how I feel about Nyla in the match when I get to the result of the Rio Hikaru Shida match, because I want to profess, like, I'll give you a little bit of a tease. I do not like the match that they're deciding to put on as the first women's match, and I'll give a lot of reasons for that when I get to that point. But until then, we'll move on. The next match on the buy-in, and the last match on the buy-in for that matter, was Private Party against Angelico and Jack Evans. I knew this was going to be a fun match because these two teams are always like the over-the-top stuff, very fun, very, very silly, a lot of acrobatics, all that kind of stuff. Private Party does get the win, like I figured, because they needed to get at least some sort of a win going into their match against the Young Bucks in the tag team tournament. So that was going to be a need. Everybody stood up pretty well, again, as usual. Like Private Party, you can tell that they are the future. Like they almost are like what the next Young Bucks are going to be. It's very potentially possible with them. And same with Angelico and Jack Evans, although I keep holding out because I feel like we're not having a proper Angelico Jack Evans match without Angelico diving 25 feet off of something. I'm still waiting for that. But it looks to me at this point, with the way that things are running, that Angelico and Jack Evans, unless they really get a fire lit under them, they're probably going to be your jobber tag team. Because I think they're just going to get lost in the shuffle at this point. It seems pretty apparent when you look at the list of teams. So it's just one of those things that, it's kind of inevitable. Somebody has to be the one losing a lot. And it looks like they're going to be the ones that do it. So we're going to get to the main card. SCU versus the Jungle Express is what they called them there. I still like the a boy, and their dinosaur. So for those who don't know the name, so we had SCU with Christopher Daniels, Frankie Kazarian, and Scorpio Sky against the Jungle Express with Marco Stunt, Jungle Boy, and Luchasaurus. SCU does pick up the win, but let's be completely honest here. It was another match where Luchasaurus is infinitely over. I'm starting to get the sense that, man, this guy can go out on his own if he wants to now. At least in AEW, he can go out on his own because the fans are taking to him so well. And he's going to be one of those guys that I'll be very curious to see what happens in a year, to see where he is and what he's doing, because it looks to me like this guy is over to the point that he could be wrestling for a title. I don't know if it's the title or if it's a mid-card title they bring in later. We haven't heard anything about that yet. But he's the kind of guy that I think can branch out on his own and really get himself over because the fans are just loving this guy right now. All in all, I mean, Marco Stunt in there, I guess, is kind of funny. I mean, it's a fun thing, but as a team, like, you never expect those three to get the win when you have Marco Stunt in the ring. It doesn't make any sense that way. And obviously, Marco is the one that took the fall, so it's one of those things where it's a lot like Angelico and Jack Evans, where I look at the Jungle Express and think, well, these might just be the jobber guys. And at least it's jobber. At least in this case, it's jobber guys that can get their stuff in and still look really good, but still job guys nonetheless. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, they're still a very impressive tag team. SCU, I still have SCU penciled in as like the surprise winner of the tag team tournament because I think they got to go a little bit outside their box and not just go obvious with it being the Bucks or the Lucha Brothers or even the Dark Order because they're selling them so far. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with it. So, still a very good match. I enjoyed the hell out of it. And I mean, as I look at the card, I don't think there was really a bad match on the card. It's just somewhere. Well, actually, that's a lie. The Battle Royale was pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. But anyways, next up was Pac versus Kenny Omega, and I figured something might have been up in this match. I know I picked Omega, and in the end, Pac did win. I should have known better because anytime that a match has a big name facing a replacement, something always is askew. And it really pushes forward the idea that I mentioned last week, where I think Kenny has to have a heavy redemption arc. Now, I thought he was going to win this and start being on his way to facing Jericho, who, spoiler alert, did win the AEW Championship like I figured. But Pac ends up getting the win, and not only gets the win, but gets it by putting Kenny Omega to sleep. It wasn't even a pinfall. He didn't use the Black Arrow. And it got an Undertaker-level reaction almost when Pac won. It was very quiet because people couldn't believe it. And I guess I should have known better, because wrestling has a funny thing about having replacements actually win matches because you don't expect them to. The match was fantastic, by the way. I really do believe that Moxley and Omega would have been the better story-told match, but this match between Pac and Omega was going to be the most impressive because of just the sheer speed that these guys have. And like the explosiveness of all other stuff was clearly on show. And by the end of it, like I couldn't keep my eyes off of this one, and I was having a blast watching it. And I was surprised that Pac got the win, but in the end, I'm actually not that surprised because it just means the Kenny Omega losing a lot story is just happening sooner. And we'll see how that plays out in their videos before TV, and then obviously once TV starts as well. Next up, the Crackle Barrel Clash, which I'm suddenly like okay with blatant advertising when it's done in this way. So Jimmy Havoc, Darby Allin, and Joey Janela had their triple threat over the top like pseudo death match. Havoc came out with staple gun and started stapling himself. Darby Allin had a skateboard with tacks on it and did an ollie on top of Janela with it. Janela was actually relatively tame, didn't really do anything too crazy. There was a tray of biscuits on top of a barrel, and I was disappointed because I thought Havoc was going to staple a biscuit to like Janela or something. Instead, he just threw the tray at Janela, so it kind of got lost. Once again, Darby Allin does his "How are you not dead" spot. He did the coffin drop like how he did on the apron against Cody at Fyter Fest, but this time Janela was set up on... was it Janela or Havoc? I can't remember now. I think it was Janela, but I could be amiss here. He grabs the Cracker Barrel along with him, which clearly isn't a real barrel because it's easy enough that he can take up to the top rope with him, and does the coffin drop, misses Janela, and lands on the stairs with the barrel on his back. And his neck snapped back pretty hard, and he didn't have the steps to kind of break it, which I'm not sure which is worse. Like if the steps was there to kind of quickly like have his head not whiplash too hard, or the fact that he missed completely and his head whiplashed a lot further back than I think you would have wanted it to. It didn't look good at all. I mean, it looked great if you're trying to just shock people, but man, that looked painful as shit to take. In the end, Havoc gets the win with an acid Rainmaker onto the other Cracker Barrel in the match. So I was right on that front. I figured Havoc needed a win to kind of get himself in the good graces of things. And that was probably my favorite match on the card, because that one was just goofy and over the top. I mean, they had a spot where they taped Havoc to a chair and also had thumbtacks, put it in his mouth, and taped his mouth shut. There was also a part where Joey Janela was also on a chair. I don't think he was taped to it. I think he was just holding on to it. Maybe he was taped to it. And was it a monkey flip? I think Havoc tried to do a monkey flip on Janela, and Janela completely flipped and landed perfectly on the chair. That was a cool thing. I mean, all in all, it was just a very over-the-top match, and it was very fun to watch. And like I said, that was probably my favorite match on the card. Would have been the ladder match, but I'll get into that in a moment. Next up is Riho versus Hikaru Shida. I'm very disappointed because Riho won, and the reasons I do not like this result is because of the way the matches have been going for her. So the entire match between her and Hikaru Shida, and this is not even me being like, I love Hikaru Shida, I really do, but this is not even a bias thing. The entire match was Hikaru Shida completely destroying Riho, and they were doing the you can't put her down spot. She was basically in the Gargano spot that we see in NXT all the time. where Riho took an infinite amount of offense and just wouldn't quit. And because she's the tiny girl, they got to make it seem like she's overcoming things. And she manages to just roll up Sheeta for the win. Doesn't even do a good move on her. And Riho will be the one that faces Nyla. Hikaru was definitely the impressive person in this match. I'm starting to think that Riho is getting a little bit too much because she is a Kenny favorite. And I don't hate Riho. Let me make that perfectly clear, but I don't think she's nearly as good as her spot on the card is showing. I think she's still got some work to do. I mean, she's 22 years old. She's got work to do. But she's still a little bit... It's hard to believe her offense. That's another big problem. Her offense doesn't look that good. And because of her size, she needs to be a lot more fluent and a lot faster in order to make it seem a little more legitimate. Whereas Riho, to me right now, is just someone who takes an infinite amount of punishment and wins with a roll-up, which I'm not too appreciative of because it doesn't really work when you're trying to build her into a number one contender for the championship, because she shouldn't be lucking her way in. So when we have a Riho-Nyla Rose match, and this is where I'm going to get into why I think this is a terrible match, and I think both competitors are not the right people to put in there. I did say Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida, and there were reasons for that. And now I'm going to give you the opposite reasons of why Nyla Rose and Riho shouldn't be the people in this spot. So we'll keep going with Riho for now. Look at it this way. Riho is someone who shouldn't be the first champion. In the same vein that Adam Page probably shouldn't have been in the spot that he was in, Riho should not be in this spot. The David versus Goliath story is not one you do for the first champion, because David should never win the first time. So in theory, this match that we're going to see on television should be an obvious choice. It should be Nyla. There should be no circumstance that Riho wins this match. Riho is not a legit champion right now. This is my personal opinion. I do not believe Riho is a champion. Because of the sheer amount of competitors they have in that company, Riho should not be the one beating them. And they're telling this David versus Goliath story with Riho, but David, for those who are unaware, David usually isn't an undefeated wrestler in these stories. Riho has not lost a match yet. Riho has not lost a match. And they're trying to get her over as an underdog. How is an underdog an underdog? It doesn't matter what her size is. It really doesn't. How is an underdog so when she hasn't lost? There's no overcoming. She's already beaten Nyla. So in theory, this underdog story is a moot point. It doesn't mean anything. And in the end, Nyla should be beating her regardless. So you're telling a story that doesn't even work with a person who you're trying to have us buy as a champion who just isn't. And then we get to Nyla. Same deal. I don't believe a monster should be the first champion. The monster character should not be the first champion. The first champion should always be someone that's respected. Or at least somebody that people will be like, all right, that's someone that, is going to be, there for a long time. Nyla is one of those people that I'm like, man, that character can only go for so long. And again, the whole idea of putting a monster as the first one, it just doesn't work. You're supposed to have the monster over, the monster is supposed to be the one that beats the champion and gets over that way. The monster isn't supposed to be the first one. So we're at an impasse here where I don't think either work. And here's the thing too, Nyla has to win this match. So I'm even more annoyed because, there's no circumstance that Nyla shouldn't win this match, because if she loses this match to Riho clean, Nyla might as well leave, because she's useless here then. If she can't even beat Riho in a singles match, because here's the thing too, she's faced Riho before, and she's lost. And there were two reasons why she lost to Riho. The first one is that she didn't take Riho seriously. Nyla shouldn't be making that same mistake twice. If she does, she shouldn't be in title contention ever, because she's clearly not mature enough to do it. The second reason is that it was a triple threat. And for most of the match, it was Riho and Yuka Sakazaki double teaming Nyla. And even though they're two of the smallest people on the roster, it's still a second person that you're going to be distracted by. You can't pay attention all the time. So the two major factors of Nyla losing to Riho the first time is that Nyla didn't take her seriously and Nyla had a second person to watch for. Both of those things should be eliminated going into this match, in this singles match. So by that logic, Nyla should just destroy Riho. There should be no circumstance. Like, I look at this match, there should be no offense from Riho at all in this match. Like, maybe a couple of attempts, but nothing. Nyla should destroy her. If you're talking the way that a story should progress, Nyla should fucking kill Riho. But that's not what's going to happen. They're going to try to make Riho look like someone who can hang with her. And it shouldn't be like that. It really shouldn't go in that direction. Because with all the circumstances that we've seen, the size difference, and all the things that Nyla now knows since losing to Riho, all of the things that David versus Goliath story have no longer exist because the Goliath story, Goliath wasn't taking David seriously. Now Goliath is. So this story should literally be she pounds her fucking head in and that's it. But instead it's going to be, this all over the place match. Rio's going to get a little bit of offense and have a couple of close calls and maybe Nyla pulls it off. If Riho wins this match, I'm going to fume. Because there's no reason Riho should win. And if she does, it shows that there is some blatant favoritism going on at the beginning. Because Riho is clearly the Kenny favorite. And if that's how we're going to run the division right off the bat, as much as I like a lot of the girls in this roster, if Kenny's going to start playing favorites right off the bat, I don't like that at all. I really don't. But that's my thoughts. Like, the match between her and Shida was fine. But again, it's the same thing. It's probably the least interesting match that was on the card because a lot of it was just Shida just destroying Riho and Riho just pulling out, a roll up to win it. It wasn't a great match. It's if you had somebody else like say who would have been a great spot in there otherwise. Like maybe it'd be a Priestley or somebody like that. Like somebody else could really go because Riho to me is still very limited, and because of that, the match kind of suffered for it because there was a little bit too much time spent in Riho just taking infinite amounts of punishment. Even Gargano can fucking go. So it's a lot more believable when he takes a lot of offense, but he can also dish it back. Riho really didn't dish a lot and still wins the match. It's kind of frustrating in that way. But anyways, let's move on here. Dark Order and the Best Friends for the bye in the first round. Unsurprisingly, Dark Order won relatively easily. The Creepers got involved to really show that this is how it's going to end up working. Dark Order is going to win a lot of matches through interference, which is what they should be doing if they're supposed to be the big heels in this division. All in all, the match was okay. I wasn't blown away by really anything in this match. It's not to say that neither team is good. It's just this was one of those matches where it's like, you know what? You guys had a fine match, and it was just one of those ones that gets lost in the card because there's so many other good ones. I mean, SCU and Jungle Express, Private Party and Angelico and Jack Evans, the aforementioned Lucha Brothers and Young Bucks also got in there. All the other tag matches were so much better than this one, and it just fell victim to being the one that just didn't do as much. In the end, the Dark Order, they were going to take Trent and carry him to the back, almost like they were doing a sacrifice thing, and then the lights cut out. And I thought they were just going to be like, oh, they disappear. They just all disappear and Chuck's left alone. Instead, we get what a lot of people are starting to call the idol taker. Orange Cassidy, freshly squeezed, shows up and does a tope suicida with his hands still in his pockets, and thus shows that apparently Orange Cassidy is a best friend as well, and that is the first time we've seen him in a proper storyline role on the show, which is going to be very interesting because now the Dark Order needs a third person as well, you would imagine. But that was probably the one cool part, just seeing Orange Cassidy. The reaction he got was really positive as well, so people clearly like him, and I think he's definitely going to get a lot of fun spots in the show. Hopefully they don't push him too high on the card, unless they play the serious thing with him where he can have really good matches. I mean, even just check out his match with David Starr for reference on that. But Yeah, this is the one match that kind of fell through the cracks a little bit. Just didn't really hold up just because so many other tag matches on the card were that much better. Cody against Shawn Spears. MJF actually ended up being the person in Cody's corner. MJF teased hitting Cody with a chair towards the end of the match, but didn't. It seems like they're making it obvious to everybody but Cody that MJF is going to turn, and it's just a matter of when, and it's probably going to be in a more unexpected time. The match itself was fine. They did the right thing. Cody attacked Spears before the bell. They brawled to the outside. So they definitely made it feel like a personal feud right off the very beginning. No blood was drawn, however, so that was not a factor. In the end, Tully did get involved. Tully did a very good job of being the heel manager that kept interrupting stuff. Eventually, Arn Anderson did come out and spinebustered Spears, which got a huge pop. Felt out of place, though, because it would have made more sense if Arn was already there. So Arn coming out just kind of felt random. It just didn't make any sense. So that part definitely... I mean, it still was exciting to watch, but it felt like it shouldn't have been there at that point. If you're going to have MJF come out as Cody's corner man, then it didn't make a lot of sense. Personally, also, going back to the beginning of the match, I didn't care for the Star Trek stuff. I thought that was a little goofy and out of place as well. That would have made sense if it was like in a Fyter Fest thing where it already wasn't a cosplay role. In a show like this, I don't know if I think that needed to be there. It was also a very strange place to put it. I'm not sure what the significance of it was supposed to be, especially when you have MJF coming out in a gold shirt and standing out there the entire match with it. That was also a little bit strange. But it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, in the end, Cody gets the win, which is my first real annoying thing other than Riho. I don't understand why Cody is winning this, because now what does it do for Spears? You know, here's a guy that we're trying to showcase as this bad motherfucker heel, and he loses relatively easily. Not to mention that Cody did the disaster kick onto a chair with Shawn Spears holding it. And I mean, here's the thing. I know that I guess you could say technically it's not a disqualification because Spears was holding it, but Cody threw the chair at him and he caught it. So in the end, Cody in a way caused this spot. So it should have been a disqualification as well. But, you know, it's one of those weird things where DQs were not being called at all because Jericho did a similar thing in his match later. But yeah, I personally do not understand Spears losing this match. Cody does not need the win. Let me make that perfectly clear. Cody does not need the win. So again, it brings that favoritism to light here because this is one of those stories that it's like, why was this the choice? And it tells me that it's going to be a lot like what WWE can be at times, where we're going to have a few results that it's going to be like, really, why is the Elite winning this one? This specific match, this is the one that I didn't get. And Cody winning this is the big example, and I feel like we're going to get these once in a while. I mean, I don't have anything against Cody. Like, I'm not saying that. It's just that in this specific case, it makes zero sense to have Spears losing because he needs that first win to really get himself as a threat. And if Cody's going to beat him the first time, what was the point? What was the point in all this? So it just kind of fell through the cracks a bit. The Escalera de la Muerte, Lucha Brothers versus Young Bucks. This was an incredible ladder match, marred by the fact that I think both brothers are probably really hurt. So, I mean, there's a lot of spots. There were a few spots of guys jumping through the ladders to the outside and things of that nature. But really, there's just two spots. I believe it was Nick. Nick did the off the ladder outside the ring through the table spot. And I think there were two problems with it. One, the ladder was not the bigger ladder, so he didn't have as much air to clear. And two, when I think he either tried to jump and got his foot caught or he just didn't get the distance and he hit the ropes. So he basically only hit like the front of the first table. It looked like he tore his ass up because it looked like he went like right into the edge of the table. It did not look good at all. And then I'm trying to think of what Matt's spot was now, and I'm kind of blanking for some reason. What was the spot that Matt took? Shit. I'm blanking now. But they were like not long after that spot, Matt also took a table bump that looked really bad too. And I'm sitting there being like, man, like this isn't going very well at all. And no, the Lucha Brothers win, but man, like that match by the end of it, I'm just sitting there being like, ooh. You got, like, of all the things, I thought Phoenix was going to be the one taking the stupid bump that got himself killed. And in the end, the Bucks are the ones that each took one that I looked at and said, oh, man, like, they're hurt. If they're not injured, or if somehow none of them are injured after that, I'm going to be shocked. Because, oh, boy, it just didn't look good at all for the two of them. And in the end, afterwards, a couple of masked guys coming out in almost like a presidential, like the rubber mask came out, beat up everybody, revealed themselves to be LAX, although that is not their name. It's Impact trademark. So I'm not sure what Santana and Ortiz are going to be called in AEW. I don't think that's been made official yet, but they are also a threat now in the tag division. So the tag division just grew to 9 really good teams, if I remember correctly, and we'll see how that goes from there. But this match, like I said, it was a fantastic ladder match. It's just by the end of it, I'm thinking, man, you guys tried a little bit too hard. You tried a little bit too hard, and you got greedy, and it ended up getting somebody hurt by the looks of it. So, as much as I want to say I love that match, I also watched it and just went, guys, you gotta chill. You gotta chill. You can't kill yourselves on every show to try to get yourselves over. You're gonna end up doing something you don't want to do. For the Bucks, you got to be healthy. You can't be on the show as it's starting out and be hurt. That's my only thing. So you guys got to be really careful with this line you're dancing around. If you're both not hurt and you're just a little bruised, thank God. But man, like you gotta be careful now because TV is going to be so important. And then we get to the last match. Chris Jericho defeating Adam Page, as I figured was going to happen. Page came out on a horse. That was fun. Jericho, no pyro, no anything. Really showed the seriousness to it. At the beginning of the match, I was a little frustrated because Jericho hit Page with a microphone. That should have been a disqualification. And I don't know why that wasn't called. JR made note of that. In the end, this match suffered immensely because the ladder match was before it. This should have been after Cody and Spears. Cody and Spears at this point should have been the second last match. And the ladder match should have been one of the openers, I think, or at least in the middle. They needed to put that as far away from the main event as possible because it just made the main event look like it was nothing. Because, I mean, Jericho and Page had a relatively good match, like a good American-style match. Jericho bled. They played that role of Page finally getting his vengeance on the guy. And then just being inexperienced to the point that like he gave Jericho one opening too many, and Jericho took it with the Judas effect and won. But in the end, because there was so much to take away from the ladder match, the crowd just wasn't into it as much. I think the crowd would have been into it a lot more if there had been a little bit of a break. Also, I think it probably would have been better if Page wasn't in the match, and I think it showed. Page isn't popular enough to be in that role. He needs that story of him coming up through the ranks. I think him climbing this quick just it didn't lend its hand to him. And I've heard that it was supposed to be Kenny and Pac in the first ever championship match. Like Kenny and Jericho was going to decide one contender, and Pac versus Page would have decided the other. And I guess if this was what they had to do because Pac couldn't show up, I guess it is what it is. But this match just, and I said it, I don't know if I said it on the show, but I definitely had said it when I was talking with other people online. This match is not what they should have done, and I think they're just trying to make the best out of it, which is why I think Jericho had to win. If Jericho was the plan all along, I mean, it was a smart plan. But this match was okay at best. Like it was hard to get really into it because you're so you're so worn out from the ladder match that it didn't carry the same weight that you would have wanted it to. I mean, Jericho pulled out a really good match, and it wasn't up to par with like his New Japan matches, like he had with Naito and Kenny Omega. You didn't get the sense that this was a main event match, because the drama just wasn't quite there. And because the fans were out of it too, it didn't feel like one. And even when Jericho won, the reaction was relatively lukewarm into what it could have been. And I think if you had someone a little more popular like an Omega or like a Cody or even somebody that like the crowd would have gotten behind on the face side, Jericho beating him would have been a lot more meaningful in the end. It would have pissed a lot more people off. But because Paige was kind of expected to lose this, it just didn't quite work. But the upside is that, like I said last week in my predictions, that at least Jericho winning means that we have a lot of stories that we can put in right away. Kenny is no longer one of them because he's lost again. But you have a number of people that can come out and go after Jericho. And also, as we saw in the backstage afterwards the show, Paige got confronted by Pac, so there's an immediate feud to start again. And with Jericho, like, Jericho's just pissing everybody off, so you could just have an endless string of challengers for him, because everybody's fucking hates the guy right now. Hell, you could even have the Bucks go at him, like, because he definitely yelled a bit of the Bucks while he was walking to the back. So there's a lot there, and as a whole, it means that TV is going to look pretty good to start with, because you have a lot of credible people and you have a lot of storylines that you can start. In the end, the show, like I said, was a number 2. It's definitely the second best one they've done. But the gap between 1 and 2, or at least 1 and the other 3 shows, between Double or Nothing and everything else, is still so wide. They tried to put on a really high caliber show again here, and due to a few results that I really didn't like, and due to just some matches being a little underwhelming, it just didn't quite have the same feel. And while it's not a bad thing, between the two shows right now, I'm almost willing to say that NXT TakeOver shows are probably still better quality overall than AEW shows are. We'll see what happens with TV now, but in terms of the matches themselves, NXT is still churning out a few better matches than AEW is. And that's surprising, because you would feel with AEW having a lot more freedom that you would get a few more better matches out. But so far, if I had to choose, if you had to point a gun at me and say, look, you get to watch the main event at TakeOver versus the main event at AEW pay-per-views, I'll take the TakeOver main event. The overall show, it's a little bit tougher, because I am leaning AEW right now, because it is a new product, it's a different product, and I've kind of worn myself out on WWE and even New Japan. Like, this whole Sunday had 3 shows. You had Royal Quest early in the morning. You had NXT TakeOver Cardiff, which I watched one match. I watched the Cesaro-Ilya Dragunov match because I wanted to see Cesaro outside of a main roster ring, and he was fantastic. But I haven't watched Royal Quest. I don't think I'll get around to it. I probably won't even get around to watching the rest of Cardiff, because I don't have as much time for wrestling as I used to, and I had to make a choice, and AEW is the choice that I've made. And who knows? With the way that things are looking, they've really got to start putting on some really good TV shows, because NXT can catch up real quick with quality whenever they want. And they've got guys they can send back to really enhance it too. So AEW's really got to step up on the stories and really have to step up on booking things the right way, because there were a few decisions made in this show specifically that I am not a fan of. And I mean, it's difference of opinion, but, you know, at the end of the day, these things got to make sense, and some of these things just didn't make sense, and that was the downside. That's the one thing that's going to mar the show from really having a good rating. But in the end, I mean, it was still a good show. I had fun, but I didn't get the same sense of enjoyment that I did with Double or Nothing, because there just wasn't nearly as much intrigue going in. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to end it here. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content. Leave your comments below for what you thought about the pay-per-view, as well as NXT TakeOver Cardiff and Royal Quest if you have any thoughts on those, because I'd love to hear that. And then, of course, share this video with all your wrestling fans. And as we get closer to October 2nd, I don't know how I'm going to structure the timing for this show when it comes to AEW on TNT. The reason for that is because I thought originally I was going to be able to watch them live, and now it won't be the case because my recreational league hockey is on Wednesday nights. So when originally I thought they were going to have AEW on Tuesdays, I was all excited because I'm like, cool, I can watch Tuesday Night Dynamite or whatever they call it, and then review it on Wednesday morning or whatever, and it works out really nicely. This time, I'm not sure when I'll get around to it because I won't have a TV feed to watch. I'll probably have to illegal stream it when I miss it for now, unless there's an on-demand service that I can use, but at this point there doesn't seem like there is one. So the timing of this show, I'm not sure if this show is going to be what I use for my AEW reviews from here on out. I'm just doing it here because I don't think I can have anything to talk about otherwise for the rest of the week. But we'll see how that works. But until then, I'm not 100% sure where this is going to go. It may be a thing that I don't get to do till the weekend. It just really depends on the time that I have because it's so limited these days. Because I try to do too much. This is the problem with taking on a few different shows on YouTube here. This is the thing with being a gamer and also watching a lot of anime and doing a bunch of other stuff on the side as well. So last but not least, guys, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for getting through this. So with that being said, we'll see you next time.